There's this incredible story in Buddhist tradition about a very special set of teachings, so profound, so systematic, that they weren't even delivered to humans first. It sounds a bit like science fiction, right? Okay, let's dive into this. So let's just cut right to the chase. Did the Buddha actually travel to another world to teach a more advanced form of his doctrine to, well, what we might playfully call aliens? And if he did, what was in that teaching that was so special? To get to the bottom of this, we've got to explore the legend of the Abhidhamma. It's often called the higher doctrine of Buddhism, and this is where the story gets really, really interesting. So the story goes like this. According to the Theravāda tradition, the Buddha ascended to this celestial realm called Tāvatiṃsa. And get this, for 3 straight months, he taught this higher doctrine in stunning detail. Only after this whole cosmic retreat did he come back to Earth to share the Cliff's Notes version with his human followers. Okay, so this obviously begs the question, right? Who exactly was in this audience? Who were these celestial beings he was teaching?
Well, the texts call them devas. Now, you'll often see this word translated as gods or something similar. But think of it this way. In that ancient worldview, devas were beings with much subtler bodies, incredibly long lifespans, and a kind of mental clarity that's just way beyond what we're used to.
And this is where that whole alien metaphor really starts to click. You can totally think of them as sentient beings from other worlds. Not necessarily little green men in flying saucers, but just an audience with a completely different set of capabilities than our own. Which leads us to the next big question. If this stuff was so important, why teach the devas first? Why not us? Well, it all comes down to a tale of 2 very, very different audiences. The reason really just boils down to one thing: capacity. Devas, with their insane mental stamina, could apparently just sit there and absorb this super complex, nonstop teaching for months on end. Humans? Phew, we've got bodies, we get hungry, we get tired, our minds wander off. We needed the digest version. So the crucial point is this. It wasn't about humans being less worthy. It was just about bandwidth. The format of the teaching had to be tailored to who was listening. A 3-month, uninterrupted, deep dive into the nature of reality, it was just completely impractical for us. Okay, so we know who he was talking to, and we know why they were the perfect audience. But what is the Abhidhamma? What's in it that's so profound, so demanding, that it needed a 3-month celestial seminar? It's time we finally unveiled this higher doctrine. So, the Abhidhamma Pitaka is the 3rd major part, the 3rd basket of the main Buddhist scriptures. But unlike the other 2 baskets, which are full of stories and parables and rules, this one is different. Think of it less like a storybook and more like a massive, super detailed technical manual for reality itself, a blueprint for consciousness. So what does this blueprint do? Well, 4 main things. First, it breaks down our entire experience into the tiniest possible building blocks. Second, it shows how every single moment is connected, how everything arises because of specific conditions. Nothing just happens. Third, it literally maps out all of our mental states, sorting them into what's helpful and what's not. And finally, all of this gives meditators a super precise language to know exactly what's going on in their own minds. Now, I know what you might be thinking. That sounds incredibly academic, maybe a little dry. But the principles behind this ancient text are actually so practical. So let's talk about what this map for your mind can actually do for us today. And the best part is, you don't have to be a celestial being to use this map. First, you start to see conditioning. You notice, oh, that angry thought didn't come from nowhere. It was triggered by something. Second, you start to see process. That solid me you're so sure of starts to look more like a flowing river of events. Third, you learn to see clearly, to tell the difference between a helpful thought and a harmful one, and actually guide your attention. And finally, you just use the map to explore your own mind, not to memorize stuff for a test. If there is one massive idea to take away from all this, it's this one. The self we're so protective of isn't a solid, fixed thing. It's a process. It's an ever-changing flow. It's a verb, not a noun. And that's a huge shift. Which brings us all the way back to our big opening question. After looking at the legend, the audience, the teaching, did the Buddha actually teach aliens? Well, you can look at it in 2 ways. There's the fun, playful view that says, yeah, kinda. The most advanced science of the mind was first delivered to beings from another world. Then there's the more cautious, symbolic view, that the story is a powerful metaphor,
showing us that some truths are so deep they require extraordinary conditions to really sink in.
But you know what's so great? It doesn't really matter which view you prefer, because the ultimate lesson is exactly the same. These deep insights aren't locked away in some celestial realm. They are available to anyone, human, deva, whatever, who's willing to just turn inward and look really, really closely at their own experience. So here's a final thought to chew on. Maybe the issue was never the teaching itself, but just the delivery method. Maybe ancient humans just couldn't handle a 3-month data dump. But today, piece by piece, we all have a chance to look into that supposedly alien map of our own minds. So the real question isn't just what the Buddha taught some celestial beings a long time ago. The real question is, what could you discover right now if you had a map of your own mind that let you see reality in a completely new way?